Hello and welcome back to the men's haircutting chapter 14 PowerPoint for the Barb 1030 class. And what we will be discussing today is our last part 4. Hair thinning and texturizing is going to be our first topic as we wrap up this PowerPoint. Hopefully it's been useful for you in terms of being able to add a little bit more color to what we have been going over in our, for each section. So we're going to be talking about more haircutting techniques. We're going to get into a couple of visuals too as well, about some newer style haircuts that are becoming a lot more popular today. So as we mentioned before, we're not necessarily going to go one by one on each of these points, but we're going to talk about some in particular. Hair thinning. Now, why is this an important term? This is the first one that's listed for this class. It's used to reduce bulk or weight from the hair. Now, why is that important? Now, reducing bulk from the hair helps, obviously, for the hair to more than likely look a little bit more balanced. So being able to use different thinning techniques, which we're going to discuss, is very important. There's different types of shears that can be used, and you really go over that in your implements chapter. So for those, you should refer back to the implements chapter in your book. Some other different terms that lists are slithering, and also to point cutting or notching. All right. Again, these are different ways that you help to thin the hair out or help to texturize the hair. So what are some different cuts that are mentioned for us? Now, the first one that's mentioned is a flat top. We also have the crew cut. These are just some generic hairstyles that have been used over time or worn by different men over time. So this is what's listed here for us for just some of the different classic haircuts. We also have just a simple brush cut. Now, this is a variation of a crew cut because that can depend on the length that the client wants. That mentions high and tight cuts. This is something that has a little more of a fade look to it, where it starts really close on the sides and fades up to the top, which is actually our third style that's listed here, the simple fade style. The difference between the fade and the high and tight is that the high and tight has much less of a blend between that parietal ridge area. The fade has more of a gradual blend. Okay, so we see here a more classic cuts, the taper haircut. This says that this is well blended, graduated cut that conforms to the head shape. So it's a little bit closer on the sides, tapered, but then it brings more length to the top. Now, what are some variations of that hairstyle? It's listed here. The businessman's haircut, the Ivy League haircut, Princeton haircut, or precision cut. These are just generic names that this haircut has been given. And you see an example of that listed here as well in the picture. Let's actually go to the full screen. There we go. So that way you can see it even better. So this is where we're at, and this is where we're at now. More classic cuts with variations to them. All right, the precision taper haircut and the classic pompadour. Now the pompadour style, as you see here listed on the left-hand side, is something that's been popularized that much more recently. It has more of an extreme look to it. What makes this a unique haircut and what makes it an even greater haircut for us as barbers is because we can charge a lot more for it. But also too, it also helps to accentuate our different style cutting techniques. You're gonna have perhaps use a clipper on the side maybe, where you can take a lot of the bulk of the hair down. You're gonna use your shears on the sides and the top to be able to create that elevation that the client wants. You're also gonna perhaps add some product, which is where you're going to charge more for, right? You can add some product to the hair to be able to help it to stick up, to stand up the way that it does and keep that elevation, keep that elevated look, keep that style. You're also going to need your blow dryer to be able to hold that style. So you're going to, every time that you use more tools, anytime you use more implements, should be more and more of a ticket that you're charging because you're using multiple techniques. So why shouldn't you charge more? Okay. So some more haircuts, the classic Caesar style. This is typically done with shears. It creates a shorter look that can vary anywhere between 1 to 2 inches on the head. Very similar to this is the Carvalho style, which essentially is simply a brush haircut where you're taking it down one level, one length with the clippers, even all over. All right, no bells, no whistles to it. Now, this topic talks about explaining the finishing work of the haircut. Now, why is the finishing work important? Finishing work really distinguishes you, as we mentioned in the first slide for this chapter, from being a good barber to a great barber. Being able to get some of the smaller areas or the more minute details of the haircut. Are you trimming the ears, the nose hairs? But in this case, it's talking about the neck shave. Now, you obviously want to consult with your client to see if it's okay to shave their neck first. But being able to get a lot of that hair off their neck, which from a lot of men just helps to free them up that much more so. That's something, again, that is more about detail. It talks about the outline shave. Perhaps after you've already done the perimeter outline or the design line, you choose to tighten that line up that much more so with a razor shave or a razor line. That's another option as well. But again, that's part of your consultation with your client to find out exactly what it is that they want. We talked about this earlier on. Perhaps maybe doing eyebrow trimming, trimming the excessive hair from the nostrils of the ears. This is all detail work. Be the barber that asks them about that, because the guy next to you probably isn't. And when the client sees that you're looking out for them, not just to be able to get a quick haircut in, but to really make sure you detail your work, that will set you apart. It talks a little bit about head shaving, and even though we're not going to get too deep into this because you talk about this a lot in chapter 13 in your book, you want to make sure that you're preparing the head for the shave. You want to make sure that you are applying any type of, whatever type of product that you're using. You want to make sure you apply it properly, keep the scalp nice and moist, make sure you're stretching the skin. This is a part of finishing work depending on the kind of hairstyle you're doing. So, some different techniques, and this is what we're going to be closing out with for this chapter. Natural drying. Now, this is perhaps if you're going to be dampening the hair, shampooing the hair, and allowing it to dry naturally, as opposed to using a dryer. Finger styling, using the fingers to manipulate the hair, to comb or brush it into the desired style. Finger waving. This is typically something that's more so done we more so cover, I should say, in the women's hairstyling chapter. But that's not a technique that's used. Blow dry styling. This is the opposite of the natural styling because now you're using a blow dryer to be able to style the hair or to just dry the hair. Now this is actually used a lot because when it comes to being in a full service professional environment, why not shampoo your client with each service? That's going to guarantee a very accurate haircut. Once you shampoo their hair, you dry their hair before you start cutting. That way, again, you're giving them a full service, but you're also making sure that you do quality work and giving them a full service, giving them, a complete service, not just getting a haircut. These are some more different techniques that are listed here as well. The free form blow drying. This is what's typically used a lot of times if you have a shorter hairstyle. So say, for instance, if I come in and I get my quick shampoo, they more than likely would just use a free form dry technique because you're not going to need a vent brush. You're not going to need a paddle brush. You're not going to need a brush to be able to dry my hair because it doesn't have a lot of length to it. But you just want to make sure that when you're drying it, you're also not just beaming that heat right on top of my head either, which we'll go over in the lab. Some other basic techniques, creating volume. Whenever you're doing any kind of haircut where there's some type of length to it, and we saw this, if we could go back to one of our previous pictures right here. I timed that pretty good, huh? So right here, you're creating volume. When it comes to the top of his head right here, you're creating that volume that helps you to be able to make sure that when the haircut is done and you style their hair and you're starting to blow dry it, it's creating that volume that's going to show that length and really complete that style to make it look nice and crisp and polished. Then we move on to braids and locks. Now this is actually a newer feature that's been added to our book. Now the example that's listed here is of some braiding techniques where the hair is braided. This is listed here, the cornrow technique, where basically it's braided right on top of the scalp, very close to the scalp, and it conforms to the curves of the head. Then it talks about locks, which are also known as dreadlocks. This is created from intertwining the hair together to form a single network of hair. So long strands of hair that are intertwined and coiled, which is very similar to hair locking that's listed here as well. The final topic is a short one, but very important. And I'm just going to read it. It says, "It is your responsibility as a barber to practice safety precautions daily in the performance of your work." I kind of read that a little bit weird, so I'm going to read it one more time. "It is your responsibility as a barber to practice safety precautions daily in the performance of your work." So this is your responsibility to be safe. It's your responsibility to make sure that you're doing everything you should be doing to make sure that the client is taken care of. And that's always going to be very important. That will never go away. The safety and protection of the public is what is our main focus. To be able to work safely and to be able to do our disinfection, our sanitation properly, and be able to do a good quality haircut and do a good service. That's the name of the game. That's what we do. So more so than even doing a great haircut is being safe at doing whatever you're doing. So whatever type of styles that you're working on, make sure that you're doing it safely. Now I'm gonna give you a break. I'm not gonna give you a little quiz question at the end of this because now we've done the whole PowerPoint together. But again, I just want to thank you for your participation and make sure that you are checking your books in terms of your Milady textbook for this chapter if you have any questions. Or make sure you come and see myself or any one of your instructors here in the barber department, and we'll make sure you get taken care of. All right? So we're going to move on to our next chapter, which will be chapter 17, women's hair cutting.